Welcome to the Trial by Combat play-in final round. This is the second of our two final rounds today, and I'm joined by our three scoring judges. I'll start with Kelly Conan, a member of our trial team here at UCLA. Kelly's going to be working on behalf of children this summer, and she's one of the only people, maybe the only person who's auditioned for the team, made the team, and said, hey, can I wait a semester before joining? Because she had an excuse or a reason that I couldn't say no to. Kelly, where'd you get to work last fall?
I was interning with a prosecutor of the United Nations in The Hague in the Netherlands.
Pretty cool. And our other two judges for our final round are former competitors at this competition. Natalie Mnuchin, an outstanding competitor from Rhodes College, competed here, and Regina Campbell, an amazing competitor from University of Chicago, competed here. They're excellent and accomplished members of our trial team here at UCLA. I'll brag about Regina because she is the one from this group who's graduating. She set the record for the most trials won in law school history. Everybody who's done this competition since 1975, no one has won more trials. So I'll ask our jurors to turn off their screens, and I'll welcome our advocates who advanced from this morning's rounds with victories. Can I get appearances, please, starting with the government?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon. My name's Jackson Kunde. Today, I represent the government. Joining me at council table is Agent Grimes.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Michael Chandler, and today I represent Daniel Ocean.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good afternoon. Anything we need to take up before opening statements?
No, Your Honor. The government's ready to go.
So is the defense, Your Honor.
I love it. I'll have my camera off during speeches. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Kunde, you can proceed.
Thank you. Without the defendant, the story doesn't add up. On July 4th, 2022, $160 million were stolen out of a hotel and casino in Las Vegas. 11 people book rooms all in a row. 11 people shut down the power, hack into security footage, and walk into the vault. 11 people left that hotel with a payout split 11 ways. Members of the jury, those 11 people got caught, but only 10 confessed. We're here today because there is one person they were protecting. One person with all the same evidence against him, one person who is in on that robbery from the beginning. The defendant, Danny Ocean. Today, you'll hear how the defendant had every reason to commit this crime, knew exactly how to do it, and got caught, just like the other 10 people involved. The only difference? He didn't confess. So that's why today we're charging the defendant with grand theft and conspiracy. Now, we have a burden today to prove those to you beyond a reasonable doubt. And members of the jury, as I'm sure Mr. Chandler will tell you, that's a high bar. But there's a few things we agree on. 10 people agreed there was a conspiracy to steal $160 million from the New York hotel. They all confessed. 10 people agree that the plan was carried out, that money was stolen. So all we have to prove to you today is one thing. The defendant was involved. And we'll meet that burden today because you'll hear the defendant was the one with motive. The defendant was the one with knowledge, and the defendant was the one his friends tried to protect. But the evidence doesn't let them. Without the defendant, their story doesn't add up. You'll hear that for the defendant, this job was personal. that his ex-wife was dating the owner of that hotel, and you'll hear how he went to Nevada to win her back, violated parole to win her back. You'll hear his words. Anyone who steals from the guy who stole my wife is fine with me. You'll hear how he planned to do it. You'll hear how the defendant had connections, not just one or two, but he knew every single member of that 10-person crew. How he talked to them about doing a job in Las Vegas. How he was the first one to book his room at the New York hotel. And you'll hear how his friends tried to protect him. But without the defendant, their story doesn't add up. You'll hear how one of those robbers was willing to list off every person involved in the case until he was asked who planned it. How he could point out every robber at the scene until he got to the defendant. You'll hear how the $160 million was neatly portioned out, split 11 ways, not 10. You'll hear how the defendant checked out the same day as every one of those criminals, and just like every one of those criminals, didn't leave a trace of DNA. So what happens next? Well, they get caught. 10 people are convicted. The defendant spends 6 months in prison for violating his parole, and the minute he gets out, buys his wife 2 properties, all cash. Without the defendant, that story doesn't add up. That's why at the end of today's trial, I'll come before you again. I'll ask you to consider the evidence. I'll ask you whether the defense's story adds up. I'll ask you to find Danny Ocean guilty. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, counsel. The defense can open.
Can you see and hear me all right, Your Honor?
Yes.
They don't have a case. They have questions. Just a moment ago, Mr. Kunde got up in front of you and he told you a story. But sometimes when you're building a story, it can be easy to ignore the facts. What if I told you that the government doesn't have any phone records, text messages, emails, any, showing that Mr. Ocean conspired to commit a heist? What if I told you that there's a 5-month gap in where the money was, where the money went, and they can't answer where it went? What if I told you that they don't have any forensic evidence at all linking Mr. Ocean to that crime? And what if I told you that Mr. Ocean has an alibi for the day of the heist? Would that change things, members of the jury? The government doesn't have a case. They have questions. And that's a problem for the government today, because today they didn't just get to ask questions. They didn't just, they had to prove it. They had to prove that he conspired to commit grand theft. And they didn't get to prove that it might have happened, that it was possible, probable, more likely than not. They had to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the highest burden in our legal system, members of the jury. They're not even going to come close, because you're going to learn today that the government doesn't have a case. They have questions. And to show you they have questions, we're going to ask you to focus on 3 different questions today. First, We're going to ask you, where's the forensic evidence? We expect Mr. Kunde to call an agent to the stand. We expect that on cross-examination, he'll be forced to admit that he has no forensic evidence linking Mr. Ocean to this crime. He'll be forced to admit he has no forensic evidence linking him to the vault where the crime happened, to the hotel rooms, to the duffel bags that they used to rob. And then we're going to ask you to think, where is the money? Because earlier, members of the jury, Mr. Kunde, he told you that the story doesn't add up without Mr. Ocean, but members of the jury, you're going to learn today that they can't add up the money because there's a 5-month gap in their investigation. You're going to learn that 6 investigators from the FBI worked 5 months on this case and didn't find any of the money from the vault. Members of the jury, finally, we're going to ask you to think, where was Danny Ocean? Because we're going to call Mr. Ocean to the stand himself. And he'll tell you that when he went to the New York hotel, he wasn't there to be part of a criminal conspiracy. He was there to see his wife. He'll tell you that he had an alibi. We expect that the agent they bring to the stand will be able to corroborate that alibi. You're going to learn that not only did he have an alibi, but it's backed by video evidence. Members of the jury, when Mr. Ocean walked into this courtroom, he was presumed innocent. That means that unless you have 0 unanswered questions, unless you have no reasonable doubts about this case, you can't take away his freedom, and you're going to have a lot of questions because you're going to learn that they don't have forensic evidence. They don't know where the money was, and that Danny Ocean was not there. And at the end of today's trial, I'm going to stand here and I'm going to ask you to find Mr. Ocean not guilty. Because when you listen to all the questions in their case, you're going to realize they don't have answers. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. We'll give Mr. Chandler a chance to resume his seat, and you can call your first witness.
Yes, Your Honor. Before we call our first witness, we'd like to ask the court to take judicial notice of a mathematical fact.
Go ahead.
Yes, Your Honor. Just that 160 million is 15,500,000 divided 160 million divided by 11, Your Honor, is 14,545,000.
I think you're rounding, right?
Just over 14,545,000, Your Honor.
Mr. Chandler?
Your Honor, as long as that math's correct, we don't have an issue with it.
Yeah, so here's what we'll do. I mean, if you want to ask a witness about approximations, that's fine. If you're going to ask the court to take judicial notice, you'll need to give the precise number.
Yes, Your Honor, we can do that now.
Great. If you want to pause to do that, that's fine.
Your Honor, it's 14,545,454 on the nose.
Terrific. Whenever you're ready, you can call your first witness.
Yes, Your Honor, at this time, the government calls Agent Grimes. May I proceed?
Yes.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, sir.
Can you introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Sure. Hello, my name is Agent Kelly Grimes.
What do you do for a living, ma'am?
I work out of the Las Vegas unit of the FBI, specifically in the Major Robberies Division. I've been working for the FBI since 2001.
Ma'am, how are you involved in this case?
I was the lead investigator for the robbery back in 2022 at the New York Hotel and Casino. We arrested 11 people in connection with the robbery. 10 confessed, were sentenced, and pled guilty. We're here today for the trial of that last one, and Mr. Danny Ocean.
Ma'am, I want to talk about your investigation into that crime. Can you tell the members of the jury how this crime was committed?
Yes, sir. Based on what was said at the sentencing hearing for those 10 people that confessed, it seems that they dressed in SWAT uniforms, broke into a vault, and stole all the money that was inside of it.
Ma'am, how much money did those criminals take?
It was $160 million.
What led you to arrest Mr. Ocean for that crime?
Well, I found a series of physical evidence implicating Mr. Ocean. I believe I found the records for the reservations at the hotel where the crime occurred. There was some security camera footage and also some forensic evidence as well.
Well, ma'am, I want to take those piece by piece, and let's start with that hotel reservation log. Do you have a copy of that log with you, ma'am?
1 moment, sir.
Of course, take your time.
Yes, I have got it right in front of me.
Is that fair and accurate?
Yes, this is what I used in my investigation.
Your Honor, at this time, the government offers Exhibit 3 into evidence.
Your Honor, pursuant to stipulation, no objection.
Agent Grimes, Exhibit 3 is what you're referring to?
Yes, Your Honor.
It's admitted.
Ma'am, what did you learn from that hotel reservation log?
Well, it showed me where the defendant was staying in their time at the hotel in relation to the people that confessed to this crime. I actually prepared a visual to show this a little more clearly.
Your Honor, at this time, Agent Grimes is screen sharing that visual aid. Opposing counsel has seen it before trial today.
Your Honor, we actually have an objection to that demonstrative. If we could show it outside the purview of the jury so that we could deliberate over the objection.
Yes, please.
So the issue we have with this demonstrative is that it actually leaves out 9 of the other people on that floor. 9 people that were left at the same time as Mr. Ocean, seven of which who left at the same time as Mr. Ocean. It misrepresents what the exhibit actually says, and therefore it's misleading the jury.
Response to that, Your Honor?
Go ahead.
Yes, Your Honor. This is a demonstrative aid. We're not offering only these portions of Exhibit 3 into evidence. The entire thing's on the record. The members of the jury will have that when they go back and deliberate. We're just talking about these 11 people that it's our contention committed this crime in today's case. Opposing counsel is free to cross-examine on this.
May I be heard on those grounds, Your Honor?
I'm going to overrule the objection.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, we're back on the clock. The jury now sees this, so we're on the record in front of the jury. Proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Ma'am, can you explain to the members of the jury what we're looking at here? Ma'am, I believe you're muted. Apologize.
I apologize. I would love to explain. On the left side here, we have that exhibit I was just talking about, the records of the reservations at the hotel. On the right side, I've done a little diagram of the rooms to show who confessed to this crime of the 11 people that we had arrested for it.
Where were those people that committed this crime staying?
Well, the first 5 who confessed were in rooms 3801 to 3805. So I'm highlighting.
Your Honor, so lack of foundation. May I be heard?
Yes.
He just asked this witness to say everyone that was committed this crime. We actually are here today because we don't know everyone that committed this crime. For her to then list all the people she believes who committed this crime after that question, there's no foundation as to who she's talking about and whether or not they actually did commit this crime. We need foundation as to who she's talking about, as to what exactly, how they're getting this information before she can just start saying that people who were a part of this crime were living here.
Response to that, Your Honor?
Go ahead.
Agent Grimes already testified she's familiar with the 10 people who confessed to this crime. If I may proffer, Your Honor?
I don't think you need to. I think that the question here is whether you're asking about committing or confessing, because I think we have as an undisputed fact that 10 people have confessed. And
Yes,
I will confess, I don't recall whether you use the word confess or commit in your question. So why don't we just re-ask that question right now?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes.
Ma'am, where were the people that confessed to this crime staying?
Sure. So the first 5 were in rooms 3801 to 3805, and I'm highlighting those on the document right now. And on the corresponding rooms in the diagram, I am placing the word confessed.
What about the 5 other people that confessed? Where were they staying?
Right. They were in rooms 3807 to 3811. So I'm going to highlight that on the exhibit as well and place the word confessed in the corresponding boxes.
Ma'am, what about that room in the middle of those 2? Do we know who was in that room?
Yes, sir. It says so on the exhibit. That's the room that Danny Ocean was staying in. So I'm circling that in red. And I'm placing an X because, as we know, he hasn't submitted any sort of confession.
Ma'am, do you know if these rooms were picked randomly?
Actually, in my interview with Mr. Ocean, he told me it was no coincidence that the rooms were arranged this way.
Objection, Your Honor, to more misleading than it is probative. May I be heard?
Yes.
Your Honor, I believe they're misquoting what Mr. Ocean said. He was actually
Let
learned.
me stop you right there.
Yes.
I think that may be a fair point, but that sounds like an impeachment.
Yes, Your Honor.
So I'll let you take that up on cross. Go ahead.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. Ma'am, you mentioned some forensic evidence collection. Did you find anything in those hotel rooms?
It's actually more about what we didn't find. In all 11 of these hotel rooms, there was no DNA left. I mean, no thumbprints, not a single strand of hair. There was just nothing there in any of the rooms.
Does that include Mr. Ocean's room as well?
Yes, it does.
All right, ma'am, we can take that demonstrative down now. Thank you.
Sure.
Then I want to move to the footage you mentioned. What footage was that?
We were able to collect some security footage from the vault as it was being broken into, and I was able to take some frames for my investigation.
Would you recognize a copy of that?
Yes, sir, I would.
Do you have that in front of you?
Let me make sure. Yes, it's right here.
Do you know what exhibit that's been pre-marked as, ma'am?
Let me check. I believe that would be Exhibit 5. Yes, Exhibit 5, sir.
Your Honor, at this time, we offer Exhibit 5 into evidence.
No objection, Your Honor.
5 is received.
Ma'am, what did you learn from this photo?
Well, there was actually some inconsistencies with what the 10 people who confessed said in their sentencing hearing and what's actually in this photo. I prepared another visual aid to further explain.
Your Honor, at this time, Agent Grimes is screen sharing a visual aid. Opposing counsel seen this before trial today.
Great.
Ma'am, can you explain what it is we're looking at here?
Sure. So on the left here, we have a picture from Exhibit 5, which I was just talking about. It was taken from the vault as it was being robbed. And right next to it, we have the transcript from the sentencing hearing of those 10 people that confess. This specific portion talks about who went into the vault.
Ma'am, were you able to confirm the identities of any of the people in this photo?
Yes, I know it's a little blurry, but if you look closely, we can see that 4 of the people in this photo are not wearing masks. I'm going to mark them with green arrows. Those 4 people were also mentioned during that sentencing hearing. So I'm going to highlight their 4 names on lines 20 and 21 of that transcript.
Well, what about the other 2 in the photo, ma'am?
Well, those 2 people are wearing masks. So just based on looking at them alone, I was unable to determine who that was. So I'm going to put red arrows above their heads.
Did anyone in that sentencing hearing mention who those 2 people could be?
1 additional name was mentioned as to who broke into the vault, and I'm highlighting that on the transcript on line 20.
Ma'am, what about that last person? Did they ever say who that is?
No, sir. At the sentencing hearing, they only mentioned that 5 people went into the vault. There's 6 people in the photograph. They never say who that 6th person is.
Thank you, ma'am. We can take that down now too.
Sure.
Ma'am, I want to talk about that sentencing hearing you mentioned. Did they ever mention anyone else's role in that crime?
Yes, sir. The roles of each of the 10 people are very explicitly laid out. Who was putting together explosives, who was hacking security footage. It's all very explicitly stated on there what each person was responsible for.
Does anyone say who organized this crime?
Actually, the judge asks the person speaking, who planned this? Their answer was, I don't remember. It wasn't me. They don't give a clear answer to that question at all.
Well, then I want to talk about whether those 10 people would have any reason to protect the defendant. Did you find any evidence that Mr. Ocean knew those 10 people?
Actually, and Mr. Ocean told me that he knew all 10 of them. He actually said that they were his friends.
Thank you, ma'am. Your Honor, we have nothing further at this time.
Ross,
Yes, Your Honor, just a moment to set up.
go ahead.
May I proceed?
Yes.
Ms. Grimes, you did a pretty thorough investigation into this case, wouldn't you say?
Yes, sir.
You investigated it for 5 months, isn't that right?
Yes.
I want to walk through what you found after 5 months of investigation. Because, ma'am, you know that the robbers, they came out with duffel bags of cash after that heist, isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
You know that Mr. Ocean was arrested on July 5th, isn't that right?
Yes, for violation of probation.
On July 5th, you didn't find any duffel bags of cash on Mr. Ocean's person, did you?
No, sir.
You didn't find any duffel bags of cash in his home on July 5th?
And no, sir.
You didn't find any duffel bags of cash in his car on July 5th?
No, sir.
Ma'am, on July 6th, you didn't find any duffel bags of cash with Mr. Ocean, did you?
And no, sir. He was in prison. He had been arrested.
Well, ma'am, you never found any duffel bags of cash in his home or in his car on July 6th?
Well, we were in Vegas, sir.
Well, ma'am, you didn't find any duffel bags of cash with Mr. Ocean ever, isn't that right?
We never recovered the rest of the cash. We recovered one duffel bag from one of the people.
That's right, ma'am. You actually have no evidence that any of where the other money went, isn't that right?
No, sir.
Ma'am, isn't it true that you have no forensic evidence showing that that money from that vault went to somewhere else? Isn't that right?
We can't say where the money went. No, sir.
Ma'am, after 5 months investigations, you still can't be sure where that money went. Isn't that right?
I'm not sure, sir. All we know is it's out there somewhere.
So if you don't know where the money went, let's talk about the forensic evidence. Because, ma'am, you'd agree you had a highly qualified forensics team in that on the scene on July 4th, right?
Yes, sir.
That highly qualified team, they looked into the vault where the crime took place, right?
Yes, there was no DNA in the vault.
That's right. That highly qualified team didn't find any DNA of Mr. Ocean. Isn't that right?
Right. After the vault was robbed, it was clean of all DNA.
And you said it was clean of all DNA. You didn't see any footage of anybody cleaning the vault, did you?
No, sir. We just know there was no DNA found.
You didn't find any fingerprints from Mr. Ocean in that vault?
Or any of the 10 people who confessed, sir.
So that's a yes. You didn't find any fingerprints from Mr. Ocean?
No.
Well, if you didn't find any fingerprints or DNA in the vault, let's talk about whether or not Mr. Ocean was even there. Because, man, we can agree that you got a chance to talk to Mr. Ocean. Isn't that right?
Yes, he agreed to sit in on an interview with me.
I mean, you know, the heist took place at around 10:03 p.m., right?
Yes.
Mr. Ocean, he told you that at 10 p.m. Well, he was playing blackjack, right?
Sorry, my screen changed. Yes, sir. That's what he told me.
He told you that he was playing blackjack and he was wearing a blue hat. You remember that?
Yes, sir. He said he was wearing a blue hat and sunglasses.
That's right, man. Blackjack, blue hat, sunglasses. You remember that?
Yes, sir.
And ma'am, after that conversation, will you check the surveillance footage? Isn't that right?
I did. I couldn't confirm it was him because I couldn't see the face of the person I saw in the footage.
Well, let's talk about what you saw. You saw someone playing blackjack, right?
Yes.
You saw someone playing blackjack in a blue hat, right?
Yes, sir.
You saw someone in a blackjack, blue hat, and sunglasses, right?
Yes, the person was also wearing sunglasses.
And that person playing blackjack in a blue hat wearing sunglasses, well, they had the same size as Mr. Ocean. Isn't that right?
Their body was about the same size. That's true.
Ma'am, someone playing blackjack with blue hat, with sunglasses, who's about the same size as Mr. Ocean. Well, that's exactly what Mr. Ocean told you were going to see. Isn't that right?
Well, Mr. Ocean said I would see that, but I couldn't see his face, so I couldn't confirm that it was him, unfortunately.
But that's a yes to my question. Someone in a playing blackjack in a blue hat with sunglasses about his size is exactly what he told you were going to see.
That's what he said the footage would show.
Ma'am, we can agree that if he's playing blackjack in the casino at 10 p.m., he can't be floors down in the vault at 10 p.m. Isn't that right?
I'd agree with that. Yes, sir.
If he's playing blackjack at 10:03, well, he can't be the person in the video. Isn't that right?
And the video of the break into the vault, yes, sir, that's true.
Thank you, Ms. Grimes. No further questions at this time.
Redirect examination, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Ma'am, Mr. Chandler asked you a few questions about the money you recovered. I want to start there. What money did you recover, ma'am?
That was a little over $14 million, or $4 million, I believe, something like that. It was a duffel bag. I don't recall the exact number, but it was from one of the people that had confessed.
What portion of the $160 million did you find, ma'am?
I believe it was 1/11 of the total money.
Ma'am, I want to talk about some of that security footage Mr. Chandler asked you about. Were you ever able to confirm that person was the defendant who you saw in that footage?
I wasn't. I couldn't see their face at all. I saw the blue hat and the sunglasses, but that's about as far as that went.
Ma'am, do you know if those robbers had access to security footage when they robbed the hotel?
Actually, during the sentencing hearing, one of them mentioned that they had hacked the security footage as part of the heist.
Thank you, ma'am. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Objection, Your Honor, to misleading. May I be heard?
Yes, go ahead.
Your Honor, he asked this witness about the surveillance footage of the vault, and she said that they changed the footage that they had. There actually was no evidence that they actually saw the surveillance footage of the vault. And in fact, we know that the robbers were in the vault. So we've heard no foundation or evidence that it actually was in that footage, that the footage that was there was what the robbers had access to.
Response, Your Honor.
I don't know that it's necessary. So, Mr. Chandler, your point is well taken, but the witness testified that they hacked into the security system and they had access to it. What it sounds like is you disagree with the witness, and I'll let you cross-examine, but I think the witness's testimony stands as is.
Yes, Your Honor.
So if you'd like to recross, I'll permit it. Is there anything
Yeah,
further?
I do have a recross on some of the contents in the redirect.
Okay, great. Mr. Kunde, anything else?
No, Your Honor, we were done with redirect.
Okay, Mr. Chandler, the floor is yours.
Agent Grimes, you just said that money in that one duffel bag, it came out to 1/11. But ma'am, you don't know how they divided up the money, do you?
Oh, certainly not, sir.
You don't know if he got more money than the other co-conspirators, right?
No, I don't know that.
You don't know if they gave the money away.
No, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. No further questions, Your Honor.
May the witness resume her seat at counsel table?
Yes, the witness may step down.
Thank you.
Your Honor, with that, the government rests.
Okay. Defense, do you plan to call any witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Daniel Ocean to the stand.
Great. You can proceed once Mr. Kunde is back on screen. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. Could you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Of course. Hi, my name is Danny Ocean.
Sir, I want to cut to the chase and to give you a chance right off the bat to address the accusations being made against you today. Did you organize a heist in the New York hotel?
No, absolutely not. I never was a part of that. I never wanted to be a part of that.
If you were never a part of that heist, I want to talk about what you were doing on July 4th, 2022. Where were you, sir?
I was in Las Vegas. I had a room at the New York hotel.
Why were you in Las Vegas?
I was there to see my ex-wife, Tess. We separated around 2021, and I thought I could win her back by going to Vegas.
And what was your plan when you got there?
Well, I'd check into the hotel and I would try to talk to her at some point during that week or a couple of weeks.
Can you tell the members of the jury why you separated in the first place?
I was arrested for theft. When I went to prison in 2021, Tess left me. And it was a huge wake-up call. I mean, I knew I had to stop then and there.
Sir, I want to talk about what happened on July 4th. Were you ever approached before that date to be involved in any crimes?
Yes, I was once, actually.
Who approached you?
It was Kat Rosenfeld, an old acquaintance of mine. She asked if I wanted to be part of a job in town with some people.
What did you tell her?
Well, no, I said no. I was done with that life and I didn't want to have any part in whatever they might have been planning.
Sir, are there any phone records of you calling the members in that heist leading up to July 4th?
No, sir, they don't exist.
Why not?
I had nothing to do with that heist.
Are there any text messages of you speaking to the members of that heist?
No, of course not.
Why not?
I had nothing to do with that heist.
Well, if you had nothing to do with that heist, let's talk about whether or not how you arrived matches how the people in the heist arrived.
Of course.
At this time, we like to show Exhibit 3 on the screen. It's already been entered into evidence.
Go ahead.
And after this, we're going to share a timeline relating to the dates that came out in trial or were in that exhibit. We've shown it to this government before today's trial. Mr. Ocean, when does it say the 10 people who confessed to this crime booked their room at the hotel?
It says on May 10th.
Does it say when they arrived at the hotel?
I have an extra copy here. It says it was on June 21st. Or sorry, the 28th.
Sir, we heard today that the heist occurred at 10:02 p.m. on July 4th. Do you remember that?
Yes, I remember hearing that.
Well, sir, if that's what the thieves did, I want to talk about what you did.
Of course.
Did you book your hotel the same day they did?
No, I booked my hotel 2 months in advance on March 12th.
Did you arrive at the hotel the same day they did?
No, I arrived on June 21st. I was there to see Tess.
Sir, during the heist at 10:02 p.m., where were you?
I was on the casino floor. I was playing $20 blackjack.
Thank you, sir. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Cross-examination, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Ocean.
Good afternoon.
Sir, you're a thief, right?
I was, yes.
You'd say you're pretty good at what you did, right, sir?
I had stolen some things, that's true.
Sir, in your time as a thief, you stole some pretty outlandish items, right?
I suppose so. I'm not sure what you mean.
So you've stolen a famous painting.
Objection, Your Honor, to inadmissible character evidence. May I be heard?
Yes.
Your Honor, right now they're trying to use a criminal conviction of 20 years ago to impeach this witness's credibility. Pursuant to Rule 609B, there's limits on what you can do with a crime that was over 10 years ago. Since this crime's 20 years ago, it has to be substantially more probative than it is prejudicial. In this case, this charge isn't probative. It's almost not probative at all, and it certainly doesn't substantially outweigh its prejudicial effect.
Response to that, Your Honor?
Yes.
Your Honor, we're not talking about the criminal conviction whatsoever. We're offering this under 404B2 as a crime, wrong, or other act to show this witness's knowledge that the specialized knowledge to steal those items would transfer to today's case and allow them to steal all this money.
May I be heard, Your Honor?
Yes, please.
Your Honor, they're eliciting a 2003 conviction, a 2003 charge of theft to show that to impeach his credibility. That's not allowed under Rule 609B.
Okay, the government says they're not using it for that purpose. They're using it to show the specialized knowledge necessary to commit a complex heist. How do you respond to their offer that they're using it for that purpose?
Your Honor, they have no foundation that it's being used that stealing that Monet painting was in any way a complex heist. For that to be used for this purpose, they need to be showing that he broke into a vault somewhere, that he assembled a team for that. They can't lay any of that foundation. And so it doesn't go to 404B. It only serves to impeach this witness on a prior conviction that's inadmissible.
Response, Your Honor?
Yes.
We don't have to show that these two cases are exactly the same. It's sufficient to show that stealing a famous painting, some of the knowledge would transfer over to stealing all this money in today's case. We've certainly met the preponderance standard to show that at least some of that knowledge would transfer to today's case.
Like what?
Like the ability to plan a crime or even take anything like that, Your Honor.
Your Honor, may I be heard?
I'm going to need a better offer of proof about the similarity between the theft of the Monet and the theft of $160 million to show that that has the same sort of specialized knowledge, or at least similar specialized knowledge. I'm not precluding use of all of the convictions. We can get into that, subject to objections from Mr. Chandler, but I'm not hearing a sufficient nexus between the Monet theft and this one. If you want to make an offer of proof, I'll reconsider, but I haven't heard anything yet. So barring that, I'm going to sustain the objection.
Your Honor, move to strike the answer that was elicited.
I don't think that answer was, or that question was answered. You can proceed.
Yes, Your Honor.
Sir, in your time as a thief, you've stolen a diamond from inside the governor's mansion.
Objection, Your Honor, again, to inadmissible character evidence. May I be heard?
Well, I think I understand this one. Go ahead. I want to hear the response from the government.
Yes, Your Honor. This one, we believe, is sufficiently similar to the case in today's case. Stealing from inside a building would certainly qualify as this case was stolen from inside another building.
Your Honor, may I be heard on those grounds?
Yes.
A home is not the same as a casino hotel. This case required a vault. It required a team of individuals. It required rappelling down into a vault to steal millions of dollars. They have laid no foundation that this is at all similar to that crime, and this case was dismissed. They're trying to impeach him with a case that wasn't even a conviction. For them to do that without laying any actual evidence that it is connected to this crime is inadmissible.
Response to that, Your Honor.
Are you offering this, Mr. Kunde, under 404 or 609?
404B2, Your Honor.
I'm going to sustain the objection.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Sir, I want to talk about what you were doing in Las Vegas.
Of course.
You told us on direct examination you were there to see your ex-wife, right?
I was, Tess. We were gonna meet up.
You were there to win her back, right?
That's right. I mean, she had left me back in 2021, and I thought I couldn't. It's Vegas, maybe I'll win big.
Sir, you weren't planning on winning your wife back by talking to her, were you?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Well, sir, you were there for 2 weeks, right?
That's correct.
For the first 12 days of your trip, you didn't speak to your wife.
No, I mean, I hadn't seen her in a long time, and it took me a while to work up the nerve.
So that was a yes.
Yes, I was nervous.
So you had one conversation.
I did. We met on July 3rd, and we had a good talk.
You had a good talk that lasted 10 minutes, sir.
A lot happened in 10 minutes, yes.
Sir, you flew all the way to Las Vegas to speak with your wife.
Yes,
Violated parole to do that.
that's true. Yes, I really wanted to see her.
Sir, you certainly didn't violate parole for a 10-minute conversation.
I went to go see my wife. I'm not sure what you mean.
So you actually think there's another way you could win your wife back.
I'm sorry, I don't know what you mean by that.
So your wife was dating the owner of that hotel, right?
That's true. She was dating Mr. Will Lorenzen.
You'd say that anyone who steals from the man who stole your wife, well, they're fine with you, right, sir?
Right. I mean, he took Tess from me, and I went to try and convince her to come back.
Then I want to talk about what else you might have been doing in Las Vegas. Because, sir, it wasn't a coincidence that you were on the same floor as those thieves, was it?
No, I must have mentioned to Kat that I was staying at the New York, and lo and behold, there they are.
So that was a yes. It was not a coincidence.
Right, it must have come out.
Because you knew every single one of those thieves.
I met them before, yes.
They were your friends, sir.
Right. I mean, regardless of their background, I would consider them to be my friends.
But sir, you're telling us you weren't involved with that group of people?
No, not at all.
Sir, you're telling us you weren't involved with the crew that was staying on the same floor as you?
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Overruled.
Sir, you're telling us you weren't involved with a group of people that was staying on the same floor as you?
Not at all. No, I'm sorry, sir.
You're telling us you weren't involved with a group of people who is staying in adjoining rooms to you?
No,
Sir, you're telling us you went to dinner with a group of people you were not involved with?
I met with some of them and we had dinner. I hadn't seen them in a while. That's true.
Sir, you're telling us you went out to drinks with those people and you were not involved with them. That's what you're telling us, sir.
We met up, and when I saw them, then we went to get a drink. I mean, they were my friends.
So you're telling us that group of people you were not involved with went and robbed the man who was dating your ex-wife?
Well, that's what happened. I guess you're saying that, but that is what happened.
And you weren't involved whatsoever in that, sir?
No, I didn't know, and I didn't want to be any part of it.
Then I want to talk about the evidence you left behind. Sir, you're telling us this was just a personal trip to see your wife.
Yes.
So there's no reason to rush out of Las Vegas.
Well, I had planned to be there from June 21st to July 5th, and that's when my trip was over.
So you left before 5 a.m. the day after that robbery.
That's true.
So when you left, you'd cleansed your room of all forensic evidence.
I'm not sure what you mean by that. No,
Well, sir, you've been here throughout today's trial.
I have.
You heard that your room had no DNA evidence in it whatsoever.
That's what the agent said, I believe.
You heard that your room had no fingerprints in that room whatsoever.
That's what the agent said, yes.
Sir, you're telling us you were sitting in that room for 14 days and there isn't a scrap of physical evidence?
I'm sorry, sir. I don't have an explanation for you. I don't know.
You don't have an explanation. Then, sir, I want to talk about what happened after that crime. Sir, after $160 million were stolen, you got back with your wife.
After July 4th, that's right. We got back together eventually.
After that $160 million were stolen, you bought 2 properties.
After January of 2023, that's right.
Paid all cash.
That's right. I got a good deal and we closed quickly.
Thank you, sir. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Redirect examination, Your Honor.
Yes.
Mr. Ocean, do you still have that exhibit 3 that we were talking about earlier?
Yes, I do.
Could you pull that up for the members of the jury?
I have it in front of me. Sorry, there must be some technical difficulty.
Sir, Mr. Kunde asked you a lot about who you were and weren't involved with. I'm looking at that person at the bottom, Bernadette Mack. Were you involved with them?
No, I don't know them. I'm sorry.
Objection, Your Honor.
Your
Outside the
floor.
scope of cross-examination may be heard.
Mr. Chandler, to which question or which portion of cross are you responding to?
Your Honor, on his cross-examination, Mr. Kunde spent a lot of time explaining that all these people are on his floor, but he's not involved with them. I'm showing that there were more people he left out, that of course he's not involved with everyone on his floor. I'm allowed to attack that when he attacked my witness on it in cross-examination.
I'm going to allow it.
Yes, Your Honor.
Sir, Bernadette Mack, are you involved with them?
No,
What about that second to last person? Are you involved with them?
Gold. No, I'm sorry. No,
What about the third to last? Are you involved with them?
no, I don't know a Jill Roberts.
Sir, were you involved with any of those other people that Mr. Kunde didn't mention?
No, I've never heard of them before.
What floor were they on in the hotel?
According to this document, the 38th, same as me.
Thank you, sir. No further questions, Your Honor.
We can remove the screen share. Is there further cross-examination?
No re-cross-examination, Your Honor.
All right, the defendant can resume his seat. Anything else from the defense?
No, Your Honor. The defense rests its case in chief.
Great. Mr. Kunde, you go first. So would you like about 60 seconds to compose your thoughts before closing? You want to start now?
Yes, Your Honor. If we could just have a moment to do that time check from our timekeepers.
Okay, we'll get the time in the chat.
And I'm happy to take 60 seconds. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
So let's get the time in the chat, and then we'll go forward with open at the closings in a moment. Okay, so I see from the government timekeeper, we've got 6.5 and 14 respectively. Does the defense agree?
Yes, Your Honor, the defense agrees with those times, I believe.
Terrific. All right, I'm going to turn my camera off for the speeches. Government, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Without the defendant, the story doesn't add up. When things started going wrong for the defendant, he wasn't worried. And when you look at the operation he put together, you can see why. He kept his hands clean, kept his mask on, kept his friends quiet. He thought he could get away with it. He thought there was no one to sell him out. And he was almost right. But he made some mistakes. And while people might protect each other, lie for each other, evidence doesn't. And without the defendant, it doesn't add up. But members of the jury, as I'm sure Mr. Chandler will tell you, we can't just tell you that. We had to prove it to you. As the prosecution, we had to show you beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant committed grand theft and conspiracy. We had to prove to you more than $1,000 were stolen, that there was a plan to steal that money, that thieves escaped with the money with no intention of giving it back. But the thing about this case is we know all of that already. 10 people involved in that conspiracy, involved in that theft. They've already confessed. So the only thing we had to prove to you today was that the defendant, Mr. Ocean, was a part of it. And we've met our burden today because we've shown that without the defendant, the story of that crime, well, it just doesn't add up. You heard how the defendant's involvement explains the motive, explains the plan, and explains who those other robbers were trying to protect. Because members of the jury, you heard a lot of argument today about whether those 10 people could have robbed this hotel alone, but without the defendant there's one thing the defendant's story can't answer. Why this hotel? Why this one in particular? We heard why today. You heard who had a motive to rob this hotel. The defendant, and only the defendant. The defendant who wanted revenge on the man who stole his wife, the man who owned that hotel. The defendant was willing to break parole, spend 6 months in prison just to get to Nevada. Is it really reasonable that he did that for a 10-minute conversation? Like the defendant told you on the stand today that he did it just to see his wife? Members of the jury, did he have a plan instead? We know the answer. That the defendant knew exactly how to rob a building because he'd done it before. We heard how he booked a room in that hotel he planned to rob and brought in 10 more of his friends. 10 people he met as a thief, 10 people who he admits were in town for a job. Because there are a lot of things the defense tried to tell you about reasonable doubt that were actually just proof. They tried to tell you he couldn't have done it because he booked his room first. We know he wasn't the member of this operation. He was the one who planned it. They tried to tell you they didn't find DNA evidence. He asked you in opening statements, where's the evidence? Well, the defendant got rid of it, as did every single criminal that committed this crime. That's not evidence that clears his name. That's proof he had something to hide. So what other proof do we have? How do we know the defendant actually followed through? Well, all we have to do is look at the story they were telling. Because without the defendant, that story doesn't add up. A payout divided 11 ways, a hotel block with 11 rooms, a robber who names 5 people at the scene of the crime when we know there were 6. An unanswered question: who planned this crime? They were protecting someone. We know exactly who. the man who walked out of that casino and bought 2 estates, all cash. Find the defendant guilty. Thank you very much for your time.
Defense counsel, you can proceed.
They don't have a case. They have questions. One day when I was 10, I was sitting in my family room when my sister walked in. She sat next to me and we started watching cartoons together. About 10 minutes later, my mom walked in. She started screaming, "Who broke my new vase? How could you two do this? I told you two not to touch it." I had no idea what she was talking about. You see, what I didn't know was that my sister had gone and broken that vase and then came and sat next to me, so it looked like we were together. And my mom, well, she got tunnel vision. She thought that because they were together, well, they had to be working together. But members of the jury, my mom didn't have any proof. She didn't have any evidence. She didn't know what actually happened. She just had questions. Members of the jury, what happened to my mom is exactly what happened to the government today. They didn't have proof. They had questions and they tried to make that a case. But the problem for them is the law says you can't do that. The law says that you don't get to just suggest that someone was guilty. You have to prove it. And you have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. We're nowhere near that today. And to show you why, we have to talk about the case Mr. Kunde presented. Because over and over again, he keeps asking questions. He keeps saying, "Oh, they got rid of the evidence. That's where it went." He said, the evidence is gone because he scrubbed it. But members of the jury, where's the proof? He didn't just get to say that they scrubbed it. He needed a witness saying they scrubbed it. He needed video saying they scrubbed it. He needed any evidence at all, other than their inability to find forensic evidence, to suggest that there was anything to find. Mr. Kunde is mistaking his inability to find evidence with evidence that it was there. But he doesn't get to do that. Today, in this courtroom, he didn't get to do that. And members of the jury, because he did do that, because he filled his case with questions, there are questions that we need to go through because he can't answer them. We talked already about where's the forensic evidence. Because members of the jury, if you don't have any scientific evidence actually suggesting that Mr. Ocean was at all involved in this crime, well, then they have to rely on circumstantial evidence. But members of the jury, we know that circumstantial evidence is a liar, because they're basing their whole case on the words of convicted felons, in words that don't even implicate my client. So when you ask yourselves, where's the forensic evidence? Think about their inability to get it, because you're not allowed to just assume that someone scrubbed it. Reasonable doubt says you have to believe that there was no evidence to find. So that brings us to question 2. Where's the money? Because they tried to skate around this fact and say that, oh, well, what we found was 1/11, so there had to be 11, but members of the jury, that doesn't cut it. They have to find all that money to figure out what happened. And members of the jury, think about what they're missing, because they're telling you that $160 million were missing. and they only found 14 million? There's over $100 million just floating out in the world. And Miss Grimes, she doesn't know where it is. She doesn't know who has it. She don't know what's happening to it. They try to gloss over that in their case, but members of the jury, that's a question. And it's a question that it was their job to answer. And members of the jury, the third question is the most important one today. And that's, where was Mr. Ocean? Because the state, again, they just decided to ask questions. Well, who could it be? Well, who was under the mask? Well, who else could it have been? But members of the jury, those questions are their fault. It's their fault they didn't look into the other people on the hotel list. It's their fault that they didn't look into the other people that lived on the same floor. It's their fault that they zeroed in and went all in on Ocean. But members of the jury, we know where Mr. Ocean was. We know that he has video-backed alibi of being in the casino. Because Ms. Grimes, she tried to gloss over it, but she was forced to admit that Danny Ocean, well, he was wearing a blue cap in a blackjack and wearing sunglasses in the casino. She was forced to admit that what he said he was doing is that exactly what the evidence suggested he was doing. Members of the jury, when you go back to deliberate, think of all those questions. Is there any evidence that they scrubbed the forensic evidence? Is there any evidence that the money went to Mr. Ocean? Is there any evidence that Mr. Ocean was in that vault? When you ask yourself those questions, you'll realize the state doesn't have very good answers. So when you go into deliberate, use your reason. You'll see that they don't have any answers. They have too many questions. And you'll be forced to find Mr. Ocean not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Government, do you need to know how much time remains, or are you good?
I know, Your Honor. I think we're ready to go.
Whenever you're ready.
Thank you. We have a case. So let's answer Mr. Chandler's questions. Because all day he's been asking you, where was Mr. Ocean? He's asking you to believe that he wasn't in that vault, that is security footage featuring someone wearing a blue hat and sunglasses means he was at the blackjack table. Members of the jury, we know where he was. He was in that vault. He's asking you, where's the money? Members of the jury, we know where that money went because there was one person who, after $160 million was stolen, went and bought 2 properties, all cash. He asked you where the forensic evidence is. Think about what he's asking you to believe. He's asking you to believe that the defendant sat in his hotel room for 14 days, didn't leave a scrap of evidence, not a hair follicle, not a fingerprint on a glass, nothing on the minibar. Find the defendant guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. I'll ask our jurors to please submit their ballots, and we'll do some brief feedback. All right, I have everyone's ballots. If I could get our two other jurors on screen. Great. So I'll ask each of you to identify your favorite thing that each advocate did during the final trial. I'll start with Natalie. What was your favorite thing that Jackson and Michael did during this trial?
Great job, both of you. For Jackson, I think you are a natural speech giver. You're very great at being slow and composed and expressive. And I think that's really where you shine. For Michael, I thought I really loved your objections and your crosses, those moments where you were responsive and thinking on your feet. I think you're a great listener and great at attacking those smaller points. So really great job there.
Thank you.
Kelly?
Yes, great job to both of you. I think that Michael, I loved the way that you used pause and fluctuation in your voice, especially in speeches. I found that very compelling, very captivating. It was hard to look away. And Jackson, it was very obvious that you know your evidence very well. Your responses to objections were very clear and very on your feet. So I thought that was wonderful also.
Thank you.
Regina?
Yes. So first of all, great job to both of you. It was a fun round to watch. It was a hard round to judge. Jackson, you are like smooth as butter. You never seemed to even in moments where I would have been really thrown off, you were like you got right back into it. There was just never a moment where it felt like you were off or confused or like stumbling. You speak so clearly, slowly. You just have like a very measured, thoughtful kind of way that you speak and go about presenting evidence. It's just very pleasant and calming to watch. Michael, you're like you're a pit bull. Okay. You're strong with it. You're very aggressive, which I like to see. You're very responsive. And your objection argument, the 609, 404 sort of debacle was great on both of your parts. The back and forth was really fun to watch. And I just enjoyed both of your performances, and I went back and forth the entire trial on both of you. And I think you will find when you see my ballot, the one who won, it was a very narrow, you can't see my scores, but it would have been 1 point, really. So congratulations to both of you.
Thank you.
This is a trial where I was glad not to have a ballot. It was extremely close. I knew before the scores came in that it would be. I was really impressed. I got to see your videos when you applied. You guys were significantly better here than I've ever seen you before. I was really impressed. And so thank you for the great trials. And anybody who is watching, sometimes these really talented competitors make it look easy. It is not easy. They had this case not only on just 24 hours prep, but they both went the opposite sides this morning. So this is their first time trying this side of the case. I can't imagine how exhausted you are. So I will just get to it. Stop me if you've heard this one before. This trial came down to one ballot and one check mark. It always does, right? Advancing to our trial by combat in June in Philadelphia, Michael Chandler. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
God, Jackson, you did an amazing job. This is a great round.
Yeah.
Had me sweating. Amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much for the questions. Thank you for the opportunity. This is awesome.
You're very welcome. Congratulations. Thank you to you both. Congrats to you and your coaches and your witnesses. And thank you to our judges. We will see you in Philadelphia. Thanks, everybody.